My name is Sarah, and I know what it means to hold death in your arms where life should be. I learned that lesson 2 weeks ago when my baby boy took his first breath and his last in the same moment. Leaving me with milk meant for a child who would never drink it, and arms that ached for the weight they would never hold again. The morning everything changed started like all the others since I lost my James, with me sitting in the kitchen garden behind the quarters, staring at nothing, while the other women went about their work with careful quietness. They knew not to disturb a grieving mother, especially one whose grief was still so fresh it seemed to hang around me like morning fog. I was 20 years old, but felt ancient, aged by sorrow and the particular cruelty of a world that could take away the one thing I had ever truly owned. My son had been conceived in love with Samuel, a field hand on the neighboring plantation, and though we couldn't marry legally, we had spoken vows to each other under the old oak tree by the creek, promising to be a family no matter what the white folks' laws said about such things. But now Samuel was gone too. Sold away 3 days after our baby died, when his master decided he needed quick money for gambling debts. I never even got to tell him about James, never got to grieve with the only other person who would have loved our child as much as I did, so I carried the weight of that double loss alone, wondering how a heart could keep beating when it felt completely shattered. Master Thomas Beaumont owned everything I could see from where I sat. 1,000 acres of prime Georgia cotton land worked by nearly 200 souls who belonged to him, like his horses and his furniture. He lived in the big white house on the hill with columns that could be seen for miles, a monument to wealth built on our backs and watered with our sweat. He had been born on this plantation, as had my mother before me, and I suppose I would die here too, if the Lord saw fit to let me live that long. Right now, I wasn't sure I wanted to. The world seemed empty of purpose or joy. A place where babies died for no reason, and the people who loved them got scattered to the wind, like dandelion seeds. That's when I heard the commotion coming from the direction of the big house. Voices raised in urgency and frustration, the kind of sounds that meant someone important was in distress. I looked up to see Dr. Mitchell's carriage racing up the drive, his horses lathered with sweat like they'd been pushed hard for miles. Sarah, the voice belonged to Mama Celia, the head house servant who had been with the Beaumont family for 40 years and knew everything that happened within these walls. She was hurrying toward me with an expression that mixed worry with something that might have been hope. Master wants to see you up at the house right now. I looked down at myself, still wearing the rough work dress I'd put on that morning, my hair barely contained under a faded headwrap. What for, Mama Celia? I ain't done nothing wrong. It's about the baby, she said, and something in her tone made my empty arms ache even more. Master Thomas's son, the little one that was born last week, he's not doing well, and they think maybe you could help. The irony hit me like a slap. They wanted me, the woman who couldn't even keep her own child alive, to help save theirs. But I followed Mama Celia up the hill anyway, my feet moving without any real direction from my mind. Perhaps walking toward another's pain would somehow ease my own. The big house was in chaos when we entered through the back door, servants rushing back and forth with bowls of water and clean linens, their faces tight with the kind of anxiety that meant their livelihoods might depend on the outcome of whatever crisis was unfolding upstairs. The smell of laudanum and fear hung heavy in the air. Master Beaumont met us in the hallway, and I was shocked by his appearance. The man who usually strode around his plantation like he owned the world itself now looked haggard and desperate, his usually perfect clothes wrinkled, his eyes red-rimmed with exhaustion and worry. "You're the one who lost a child," he said, his voice rough. "Yes, sir," I replied, keeping my eyes down like I'd been taught since childhood, though inside I felt a flash of anger at how he referred to my loss, as if James had been misplaced rather than torn from my heart. "My son, he won't. The wet nurses we've hired, none of them can get him to take milk properly. He's getting weaker every day." Master Beaumont's voice cracked slightly, revealing a vulnerability I'd never heard from him before. "Dr. Mitchell says sometimes a woman who has experience with newborns, sometimes they have better success experience with newborns. That's what he called watching your child die in your arms, experience. Like it was something you learned in school, rather than something that carved pieces out of your soul." But I understood what he was asking, and despite my anger, despite my grief, I felt something stir in my chest at the thought of holding a baby again. "Where is he?" I asked, the words coming out before I could stop them. Master Beaumont led me up the grand staircase to the family quarters. past portraits of dead Beaumont, who stared down with pale eyes that seemed to judge everyone who walked beneath them. The nursery was at the end of the hall, a room decorated with expensive furnishings and toys that probably cost more than most slaves would see in a lifetime, but all that luxury couldn't mask the atmosphere of desperation that filled the space. Mrs. Beaumont sat in a rocking chair by the window, pale and weak from childbirth, tears streaming down her face as she watched her husband pace back and forth like a caged animal. On the far side of the room, Dr. Mitchell was examining something in a basket. His face, grave that something, was the tiniest baby I had ever seen, barely bigger than a loaf of bread, with skin so pale it was almost translucent and breathing so shallow I had to look closely to see his chest moving at all. He was clearly struggling to survive, his little fists clenched as if he was fighting some invisible enemy. He was born too early, Dr. Mitchell explained when he saw me looking, and he's had trouble feeding since birth. We've tried 3 different wet nurses, but he won't take to any of them, just gets weaker and weaker. I approached the bassinet slowly, my heart pounding with a mixture of hope and terror. What if I failed this child too? What if my arms were cursed to hold only death and sorrow? But as I looked down at that tiny, struggling form, I felt something I hadn't experienced since James died. The stirring of maternal instinct that recognized a child in need. Can I hold him? I asked. And everyone in the room seemed to hold their breath. Master Beaumont nodded curtly. If you think it might help, but be careful. He's all we have. I reached into the bassinet and carefully lifted the baby, supporting his tiny head the way my mother had taught me when I was barely old enough to understand what being gentle meant. He was so light, so fragile, like holding a bird with broken wings, but the moment he settled against my chest, something extraordinary happened. The baby, who had been fussing weakly for days according to everyone in the room, went completely quiet. His little body relaxed against mine, as if he had been waiting his whole short life for exactly this moment. I could feel his breathing deepen and slow, could sense some tension leaving his tiny frame. My lord, Mrs. Beaumont whispered from her chair. Look how he calms with her. I looked down at the baby in my arms and felt my milk let down in response to his presence, my body recognizing what my mind was still struggling to accept, that this child needed what I had to give. That perhaps losing James had been preparation for saving someone else's son. He's hungry, I said simply, stating what seemed obvious to me but apparently hadn't occurred to anyone else in the room. Really hungry, and maybe he needs someone who understands what it means to fight for every breath. Master Beaumont stared at me for a long moment, and I could see him struggling with the idea of trusting his most precious possession to a slave woman he had never paid much attention to. But desperation makes people do things they never thought possible. Will you try to nurse him? He asked, the words seeming to stick in his throat. I nodded, already moving toward the rocking chair that Mrs. Beaumont had vacated, positioning myself and the baby with practiced ease despite the fact that my heart was racing with nervousness and hope in equal measure. If this worked, if I could give this child what he needed to live, maybe it would somehow honor James's memory. Maybe it would give meaning to my losses. I settled the tiny boy against my breast. I whispered a prayer to whatever powers might be listening, asking them to let this baby thrive, to let my milk be life for him instead of the emptiness it had become, to let something good come from all this sorrow. The baby latched on immediately, his little mouth working with surprising strength for someone so small, and I felt a rush of relief and joy so intense it brought tears to my eyes. For the first time in 2 weeks, my arms held life instead of death, purpose instead of emptiness. He's feeding, Dr. Mitchell said in wonder, as if he was witnessing a miracle rather than the simple act of a hungry baby taking nourishment. And maybe it was a miracle. Maybe sometimes the Lord takes one thing away so you can give life to something else. Maybe my James had died so this nameless little boy could live. I didn't understand it. Might never understand it. But I could accept it if it meant this child would grow strong and healthy. As the baby nursed contentedly in my arms, I looked up to see Master Beaumont watching us with an expression I had never seen on his face before. Something that might have been gratitude mixed with confusion. As if he was seeing me as a person for the first time, instead of just another piece of property. What do you call him? I asked softly, not wanting to disturb the feeding but needing to know the name of this child who was bringing my heart back to life. William. Mrs. Beaumont answered from across the room, her voice full of hope for the first time since I'd entered. William Thomas Beaumont. Hello, William. I whispered to the baby in my arms. You just drink all you want, little one. We're going to make you strong. And for the first time since James died, I believed that maybe, just maybe, everything would be all right. 3 days passed before anyone truly believed that William would survive. 3 days of me sitting in that expensive nursery every few hours, feeding a baby who seemed to grow stronger with each feeding, his color improving from that frightening gray pallor to a healthy pink that made Dr. Mitchell shake his head in amazement. I had been given a small room adjoining the nursery. The first time in my life I had slept anywhere but the quarters with the other field hands. It was strange being so close to the family's private spaces, hearing their conversations through the thin walls, seeing how they lived when they thought no one was watching. Master Beaumont came to check on William constantly, sometimes 3 or 4 times in a single hour, hovering near my chair while I fed his son, his face a mixture of gratitude and something that looked like resentment, as if he was angry that his child's life depended on someone he had never considered fully human. How do you know to do that? He asked one afternoon, watching me gently rub William's back to help him bring up air after feeding the other nurses. They didn't seem to understand his needs the way you do. I looked down at William, now noticeably bigger than he had been when I first held him, his little face peaceful in sleep. I suppose because I remember what it was like to need someone to understand me, I said quietly. Babies, they can't tell you what's wrong, but they can show you if you know how to look, and you know how to look because of your own child, Master Beaumont said, not asking but stating, as if he was trying to understand something that had never occurred to him before. Yes, sir. James taught me to listen with more than just my ears, I replied, my voice catching slightly on my son's name. He taught me that love means paying attention to the little things, the way someone breathes, the way they hold their body, the sounds they make when they're content or when they're afraid. Master Beaumont was quiet for a long moment, studying my face as if he was seeing me clearly for the first time. I didn't realize you had named him, he said finally. Your son, I mean, I didn't think, that is, I assumed you assumed we didn't love our children the same way you love yours. I finished for him, keeping my voice gentle despite the anger that wanted to rise, that our hearts don't break when we lose them, that we don't dream about their futures and grieve for everything they'll never get to experience. Master Beaumont started, then stopped, seeming to struggle with ideas that challenged everything he had been taught about people like me. I suppose I never really thought about it that way. William stirred in my arms, making the small huffing sound. That meant he was about to wake up hungry again. I adjusted my position and loosened my dress, preparing for another feeding, while Master Beaumont watched with fascination, as if witnessing some mysterious ritual he had never understood before. When William grows up, I said as the baby latched on and began nursing eagerly, he won't remember any of this, won't remember being so close to death or the woman who helped save his life, but I'll remember every moment, every feeding, every time he smiled in his sleep or reached for my finger while he ate. Why? Master Beaumont asked, his voice genuinely curious rather than challenging. Why would you care so much about a child who isn't yours, who will grow up to be your master? The question hung in the air between us, heavy with implications neither of us wanted to examine too closely. I looked down at William, now contentedly nursing, his tiny hand resting against my breast in perfect trust, and felt my heart swell with fierce protective love. Because he needs me, I said simply, because right now, in this moment, I'm the only thing standing between him and death. And because maybe loving him helps keep James's memory alive. Maybe it proves that the love I had for my son was real and valuable. Even if the world says it didn't matter, it mattered, Master Beaumont said quietly, the words surprising both of us. Your love for your son, it mattered, and it's what's saving William now. That evening, after William had been fed and settled for the night, I sat by the nursery window watching the sun set over the cotton fields where I had worked my entire life. Tomorrow I would go back to those fields, back to the endless cycle of planting and picking and hauling that defined the lives of everyone who looked like me. But for now, for these precious hours, I was something more missing. Beaumont appeared in the doorway, moving slowly but with determination. She had been recovering from childbirth and had barely left her bed since William's birth, but tonight she seemed stronger, more present than I had seen her before. Sarah, she said, approaching my chair with careful steps, I wanted to thank you, properly thank you, for what you've done for our son. I stood quickly, as was expected when the mistress of the house entered a room, but she gestured for me to sit back. Down, please, don't. You've been caring for William around the clock. You must be exhausted. I'm fine, ma'am, I replied. Though truthfully I was tired in ways that went deeper than simple physical fatigue. The constant vigilance required to keep a fragile baby alive was emotionally draining, especially when that baby was beginning to feel like my own. No, you're not fine, Mrs. Beaumont said, settling into the chair beside mine. You're grieving your own child while saving mine, and we haven't acknowledged how difficult that must be for you. Her words brought tears to my eyes that I tried to blink away. It was the first time anyone in the big house had acknowledged my loss as real, as worthy of sympathy rather than simply an inconvenience that happened to work out in their favor. James would have been about William's age if he had lived, I said, the admission slipping out before I could stop it. Sometimes when I'm holding William, I pretend, just for a moment, that I'm holding my own son. Mrs. Beaumont reached over and took my hand, a gesture so unexpected it made me gasp. White women didn't touch slaves like that, didn't offer comfort or recognition of shared experience, but her fingers were warm and gentle as they squeezed mine. I can't imagine losing a child, she whispered, her own voice thick with emotion, watching William struggle these past weeks, seeing how close we came to losing him. It's been the most terrifying experience of my life, but you lived through actually losing yours and still found the strength to save mine. Didn't have much choice in the matter, I replied, though I appreciated her words more than I could express. Master Beaumont needed someone to feed William, and I was available. No, Mrs. Beaumont said firmly. It's more than that, and we both know it. What you're doing, the way you care for him, the attention you pay to his every need, that's not just duty, that's love. And love can't be commanded or expected, it has to be given freely. She was right, and we both knew it, somewhere over the past few days. William had become more than just an assignment, more than just a way to earn my keep and avoid the fields. He had become the child my heart needed to love, the baby my arms needed to hold, the future my hopes needed to believe in. What happens when he's older? I asked the question that had been haunting me since the first day, when he doesn't need a wet nurse anymore, when he's weaned and walking and becoming a little boy instead of a baby. Mrs. Beaumont was quiet for a long moment, and I could see her struggling with the same question. I don't know, she admitted, but I do know that William will always need someone who loves him the way you do, someone who sees him as precious rather than just an heir, and we would like that someone to be you. As what? I asked, hardly daring to hope for an answer that would let me stay close to the child who was healing my broken heart. As his nurse, his companion, his guardian angel, Mrs. Beaumont said, her voice growing stronger with each word, as the woman who saved his life and who we trust to keep him safe and loved as he grows. The offer was more than I had dared to dream, a chance to watch William grow from baby to boy to man, to be part of his life in a way that would matter, to love him openly and completely without fear that he would be taken away from me the way James had been. I would like that very much, I whispered, my voice barely audible through the tears that were now flowing freely. I would like to watch him grow up strong and healthy, to be there when he takes his first steps and says his first words. Then it's settled, Mrs. Beaumont said, squeezing my hand again. You'll stay with William, officially, as his personal nurse and companion. You'll have your own room here in the house, your own responsibilities separate from the fieldwork. As if summoned by our conversation, William woke up and began the soft fussing that meant he was hungry again. I moved to lift him from his bassinet, marveling once again at how perfectly he fit in my arms, how right it felt to hold him in comfort. There's my little fighter, I murmured as I settled him against my breast, watching his face relax into contentment as he began to nurse, growing bigger and stronger every day. Aren't you, sweet boy? Mrs. Beaumont watched us with a soft smile, and I could see her understanding, perhaps for the first time, that the bond between a woman and the child she nurtures goes deeper than blood or law or social convention. That love recognizes no boundaries when it comes to protecting and caring for the innocent. He loves you, she said simply. Anyone can see it in the way he calms when you hold him, the way he searches for you when he's fussing. You've become his mother in every way that matters. Her words were both a gift and a recognition of something I had been afraid to acknowledge, even to myself, that William had indeed become my son, not by birth, but by choice, by need, by the mysterious alchemy that transforms the separate hearts into a family. As I sat there nursing William, while his birth mother watched with approval and gratitude, I felt something I hadn't experienced since before James died. I felt hope for the future, purpose in the present, and the deep satisfaction that comes from being exactly where you're supposed to be, doing exactly what you're meant to do. William finished eating and drifted back to sleep in my arms, his little body warm and solid against my chest, his breathing deep and regular, the breathing of a healthy, thriving child who knew he was loved and protected. Tomorrow I'll speak to Thomas about making the arrangement official, Mrs. Beaumont said as she prepared to return to her own room, about ensuring you have everything you need to care for William properly. Thank you, I said, though the words seemed inadequate for what she was offering. Thank you for seeing that love doesn't know color, that a mother's heart is the same whether it beats in a white breast or a black one. Thank you, she replied, for loving our son enough to save his life, and for teaching us that some gifts are too precious to be bought. They can only be given freely by someone with a heart big enough to love beyond their own pain. After she left, I sat alone with William in the quiet nursery, listening to the night sounds drifting in through the open window, the same sounds I had heard my entire life from the quarters, but now they seemed different, more peaceful, like a lullaby sung by the whole world to welcome this child into life. We're going to be all right, little William, I whispered to the sleeping baby. Both of us. We're going to be just fine. And for the first time since James died, I truly believed it. By the end of the first week, William had gained nearly a pound, his little face filling out from the gaunt, desperate look he'd worn when I first held him to the round, healthy cheeks of a thriving baby. Dr. Mitchell pronounced it nothing short of miraculous, though I knew it had less to do with miracles and more to do with consistent love, attention, and the simple fact that William finally had someone who understood his needs. Master Beaumont had kept his distance during those early days, checking on William's progress through reports from his wife or Dr. Mitchell, rather than witnessing firsthand the daily routine of feeding and caring that was bringing his son back to life. I understood his hesitation, accepting that his child's survival depended on a slave woman challenged everything he had been taught about the natural order of things. But on the 8th morning, he appeared in the nursery just as I was beginning William's first feeding of the day, standing awkwardly in the doorway as if unsure whether he was welcome in his own house. "How is he this morning?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral, though I could see the anxiety in his eyes, the love for his son that he was trying to hide behind his usual stern demeanor growing stronger every day. I replied, adjusting William's position as he latched on eagerly. "He's taking more milk at each feeding, sleeping better between meals. And look at his color, sir, look how pink and healthy he looks." Master Beaumont approached slowly, his gaze fixed on his son's face with an intensity that revealed just how terrified he had been of losing this child. William was indeed the picture of health now, his skin clear and bright, his little body solid and warm in my arms. "He seems content," Master Beaumont observed, watching William's tiny hand rest against my breast as he nursed, peaceful in a way he never was with the other nurses. "He knows he's safe," I explained. "Babies can sense when the person holding them is afraid or uncertain, but they can also sense when they're truly loved and wanted. William knows I'll take care of him, that I'll never let anything bad happen to him if I can help it." "And why?" Master Beaumont asked, settling into the chair across from mine. "Why do you love him so much? What makes you care about my son with such devotion?" It was a question I had been asking myself, trying to understand the fierce protectiveness I felt for this child who was not mine by blood but had become mine in every other way that mattered. "I suppose because he needed me," I said slowly, choosing my words carefully, "because when I first held him, I could feel how hard he was fighting to live, how much he wanted to stay in this world, and I couldn't bear the thought of him losing that fight when I had something to offer that might help him win. But it's more than that, Master," Beaumont pressed, his voice gentler than I had ever heard it. "I can see it in your face when you look at him, in the way you hold him. You love him the way a mother loves her child." "Yes, sir," I admitted, knowing there was no point in denying what was obvious to anyone who watched us together. "I do love him that way, and I know that might seem wrong to you, that a slave woman would dare to love your son like her own, but I can't help it. Love isn't something you can turn on and off like a spigot." "It doesn't seem wrong," Master Beaumont said quietly, his words surprising both of us. It seems like exactly what William needs, what he's needed all along. Someone who loves him enough to fight for his life." William finished nursing, and I lifted him to my shoulder, rubbing his back gently, until he released a satisfying burp that made Master Beaumont smile despite himself. These small moments of normal baby behavior had become precious victories, proof that William was thriving under my care. Would you like to hold him? I asked, seeing the longing in Master Beaumont's face. He's awake and content. Perfect time for his father to spend a few minutes with him. Master Beaumont hesitated, as if he was afraid his touch might somehow undo all the progress William had made, but finally reached out to take his son. His movements, careful and uncertain compared to my practiced ease, support his head. I instructed softly, helping him adjust his grip. There, like that. See how he looks right up at your face. He knows you're his papa. Father and son regarded each other solemnly. William's dark blue eyes studying his father's face with the intense concentration that babies bring to everything new and interesting. Master Beaumont's expression softened as he looked down at his child, and I could see the love and wonder there, barely contained beneath his usual stern facade. He's beautiful, Master Beaumont whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Perfect, and beautiful and alive. Thanks to you, he's beautiful because he's yours, I replied, and he's alive because he's a fighter. Just like his father. I just gave him what he needed to win the fight. We sat together in comfortable silence, watching William wave his tiny fists and make the soft cooing sounds that meant he was happy and alert. It was a peaceful moment, the three of us sharing the nursery like a real family, and for a few minutes I could almost forget the vast social gulf that separated us. Sarah, Master Beaumont said finally, his voice serious, I need you to know that I understand now what you've done for William, for our family. It goes far beyond duty or obligation. You've given us our son's life, and we will never forget that I was just doing what any mother would do, I replied, though his words warmed my heart more than I wanted to admit. No, he said firmly, not any mother. You, specifically you, with your patience and your instincts and your capacity to love a child who needed exactly what you had to offer. There's something special about the way you care for him. Something that can't be taught or commanded. William began to fuss, the tired fussy that meant he was ready for his morning nap. I took him back from his father and settled him in my arms, swaying gently until his eyelids began to droop. Will you sing to him? Master Beaumont asked suddenly. I've heard you humming, sometimes when I pass by the nursery, and he always seems to settle when you do. I began the lullaby my own mother had sung to me. A song passed down through generations of women who had loved their children in circumstances far more difficult than anyone should have to endure. The voice was soft and low, wrapping around William like a blanket of sound and love. Hush now, baby. Don't you cry. Mama's gonna sing you a lullaby. Close your eyes and go to sleep. Mama's love will yours to keep. William's breathing deepened and slowed as the familiar melody washed over him, his little body relaxing completely in my arms as sleep claimed him. Master Beaumont watched the whole process with fascination, as if witnessing magic rather than the simple comfort of a mother's voice. Where did you learn that song? He asked when I finished. From my mama, and she learned it from hers. It's been sung to babies in my family for as long as anyone can remember, I replied, carefully transferring the sleeping William to his bassinet. It's beautiful. Master Beaumont said, peaceful. Would you teach it to my wife, so she can sing it to William? To the request touched me deeply. This acknowledgement that my traditions, my family's ways of loving, had value worth sharing. I'd be honored to teach it to Mrs. Beaumont, I said. William should know all the lullabies that love can offer. Sarah, Master Beaumont said as he prepared to leave the nursery, I want you to know that your position here, caring for William, it's permanent. For as long as you want it, you'll never have to worry about being sent back to the fields or sold away from him. You have my word on that. Thank you, sir, I replied, though his promise meant more to me than he could possibly understand. The security of knowing I would be allowed to love William and watch him grow was worth more than any treasure. Thank you, he said simply, for saving my son and for teaching me that love, real love, comes from the heart, not from the color of skin or the circumstances of birth. After he left, I sat beside William's bassinet, watching him sleep, his little chest rising and falling in the peaceful rhythm of a child who feels completely safe and loved. In the space of just over a week, this baby had transformed my life from empty grief to purposeful joy, had given me a reason to wake up each morning and face the world with hope. The afternoon brought Mrs. Beaumont to the nursery, looking stronger and more vibrant than she had since giving birth. She had been gradually spending more time with William as her recovery progressed, and I could see her own maternal instincts awakening as her son grew stronger and more responsive. Thomas told me about your conversation this morning, she said, settling into the rocking chair beside mine. about making your position here permanent. I want you to know how much that means to us, how grateful we are that you're willing to stay willing. I repeated with a soft laugh, Mrs. Beaumont, there's nowhere else I'd rather be. William has become my whole world. Watching him grow and thrive is the greatest joy I've ever known, and he loves you just as much, she replied, reaching over to stroke William's sleeping face. Anyone can see it, the way he calms when you speak, the way he searches for you when he's upset. You've become his security, his comfort, his mother. The word hung in the air between us, acknowledging the reality of our situation in a way that was both beautiful and complicated. I was William's mother in every way except blood, and Mrs. Beaumont was his mother in blood but had been too weak to care for him during his most vulnerable time. I hope that doesn't hurt you, I said gently, knowing that he turns to me for comfort. I never wanted to take anything away from you. It doesn't hurt, Mrs. Beaumont said with surprising firmness. It gives me peace, knowing that when I can't be with him, when I'm tired, or unwell, or simply overwhelmed by the responsibilities of motherhood, there's someone who loves him as much as I do watching over him. Maybe, I suggested carefully, maybe William is lucky enough to have two mothers, one who gave him life and one who helped him learn to live. Mrs. Beaumont smiled, her eyes bright with tears. I like that idea very much. Two mothers united in loving one precious child, sharing the joys and responsibilities of raising him to be the man he's meant to become. As if he could hear our conversation, William woke up and immediately began the hungry cry that meant feeding time. I lifted him from his bassinet and settled him against my breasts, watching his face relax into contentment as he began to nurse. Would you like me to teach you that lullaby? I asked Mrs. Beaumont. The one your husband heard me singing this morning. I would love that, she replied, her voice warm with gratitude and anticipation. So, I sang softly while William nursed, letting Mrs. Beaumont learn the melody and words that had comforted generations of children, sharing one more piece of my heritage with this family that was slowly learning to see me as more than property, as a person worthy of respect and gratitude. Hush now, baby, don't you cry. Mama's gonna sing you a lullaby. Close your eyes and go to sleep. Mama's love is yours to keep. When the song ended, Mrs. Beaumont tried it herself, her voice sweet and gentle as she sang to her son. William's eyes remained closed, but his breathing deepened, as if he recognized the love in her voice, even if the melody was new to him. Perfect, I said softly. He'll know that song means love and safety, no matter who sings it to him. Thank you, Mrs. Beaumont whispered, for sharing that with us, for sharing yourself with us, for loving our son enough to save his life. Thank you, I replied, for letting me love him, for seeing that some gifts can't be bought or commanded. They can only be given freely by someone who chooses to care. As the sun set through the nursery windows, painting the room in soft golden light, I held William while he finished his evening feeding, his little body warm and content in my arms. Mrs. Beaumont sat beside us, humming the lullaby she had just learned, and for a moment the three of us existed in perfect harmony, united by our shared love for one precious child. That night, as I settled William in his bassinet for sleep, I whispered the same prayer I had been saying every night since he came into my life. Thank you for letting me love this child. Thank you for healing my broken heart through caring for him. And please, please let him grow up strong and healthy. And knowing he is cherished, William slept peacefully through the night, his breathing deep and regular, the breathing of a child who knows he is safe and loved. And I slept too, better than I had since James died, knowing that tomorrow would bring another day of watching over this little boy who had become my reason for living. 3 months had passed since that first desperate day when I held William in my arms, and the transformation was nothing short of miraculous. The baby who had been barely clinging to life was now a healthy, robust infant who smiled and cooed and reached for toys with eager little hands. His laughter had become the sweetest sound in the world. To May had settled into a routine that felt more natural than anything I had ever experienced. Waking before dawn to feed William, spending my days caring for every aspect of his needs, teaching him to sit up and play with rattles, reading to him from the children's books that Mrs. Beaumont had ordered from Charleston, watching him discover the world with wonder and delight. Master Beaumont had become a regular visitor to the nursery, no longer the distant, intimidating figure who had once barely acknowledged my existence, but a father who clearly adored his son and had come to respect the woman who cared for him. Our conversations had grown easier, more natural, though we both understood the boundaries that still existed between us. Look at him, Master Beaumont said one afternoon, watching William sitting supported by pillows, batting at a soft toy horse that hung from a wooden frame. 6 months ago I thought, I was sure we were going to lose him. And now look how strong he is. How alert and happy. He's a fighter, I said, adjusting the toy so William could reach it more easily. Always has been. From that very first day when he was so sick, but still trying so hard to live. He just needed someone to believe in him. He needed you. Master Beaumont corrected, his voice carrying a note of something that sounded almost like reverence. Specifically you, with your patience and your instincts and your ability to see what he needed when no one else could. William chose that moment to achieve his goal of grasping the toy horse, bringing it immediately to his mouth for exploration, his face bright with triumph at this small victory. Both Master Beaumont and I laughed at his expression, sharing the kind of moment that parents treasure. Sarah, Master Beaumont said, his tone becoming more serious. I need to tell you something. Something I should have said months ago but didn't know how to express. I looked up from where I was, wiping drool from William's chin, curious about the sudden change in his demeanor. Yes, sir, when this all started, when William was so sick and we were desperate enough to try anything, I'll be honest with you, I didn't expect much, he continued, his words coming slowly as if he was choosing each one carefully. I hoped you might be able to keep him alive long enough for us to find a better solution. His admission stung. Though I understood it, from his perspective I had been nothing more than a last resort, a desperate attempt to save his son, when all other options had failed. But what I've seen these past months, the way you care for him, the way he responds to you, the depth of love and commitment you've shown, Master Beaumont continued, it's opened my eyes to things I never wanted to see before, about the people who work this plantation, about you specifically. What kinds of things? I asked. Though I wasn't sure I wanted to hear the answer, that you're not just property, or labor, or a convenience, he said, struggling with concepts that clearly challenged everything he had been raised to believe. You're a person with feelings and intelligence, and capacity for love that equals anyone's, and the fact that I never saw that before, never even looked for it, that's a failing in me. Not in you. His words were more than I had dared hope for. Recognition not just of my value as William's nurse but of my humanity as a person worthy of respect and consideration. It was a gift I had never expected to receive from the man who owned me. I used to think, Master Beaumont continued, that the natural order of things meant some people were born to serve and others to be served, that God had made it that way, and questioning it was wrong. But watching you with William, seeing the love and intelligence you bring to caring for him, I can't believe that anymore. William had dropped his toy and was beginning to fuss. The tired fussy that meant nap time was approaching. I lifted him from his pillows and settled him against my shoulder, swaying gently while I rubbed his back. You love him, Master Beaumont observed, really love him, not because you have to, but because you choose to, and he loves you back just as much. Anyone can see it in the way his whole face lights up when you enter the room. Love doesn't know color, I said softly, babies especially. They don't care about anything except whether the person holding them makes them feel safe and cherished. William knows I would do anything to protect him, and that's all that matters to him. It should be all that matters to me too, Master Beaumont said, his voice heavy with something that sounded like regret. And from now on, it will be, I want you to know that in this house, in this family, you're not just the help. You're William's other mother, and you'll be treated with the respect that position deserves. William had fallen asleep against my shoulder, his little body relaxed and trusting, his breathing deep and peaceful. I carried him to his bassinet and settled him carefully, covering him with the soft blanket that Mrs. Beaumont had embroidered with his initials. There's something else, Master Beaumont said as I tucked William in, something I've been discussing with my wife, and we want your opinion on it. Yes, sir, we're thinking about having William baptized next month, and we'd like you to stand with us during the ceremony, he said, his words coming out in a rush, as if he was afraid he might lose his nerve, as his guardian, his protector, the woman who saved his life. The request took my breath away. The idea of being included in such an important family moment, of being acknowledged publicly as having a special role in William's life, was more honor than I had ever imagined possible. Are you sure? I asked. People will talk. They'll say it's not proper for a slave to be part of such a ceremony. Let them talk, Master Beaumont said firmly. Anyone who has a problem with honoring the woman who saved my son's life can take their opinions elsewhere. You've earned the right to be there. And William deserves to have both his mothers present for his baptism. Both his mothers. I repeated, treasuring the phrase that officially acknowledged what had been true in my heart for months. That's what you are. He confirmed, the woman who feeds him and comforts him and loves him every single day, who knows his every expression and sound and need, who would protect him with her life if necessary. If that's not a mother, then I don't know what is. Mrs. Beaumont appeared in the nursery doorway, moving quietly so as not to wake the sleeping William. I heard voices. Is everything all right? I was just telling Sarah about our plans for the baptism, Master Beaumont explained, and asking her to stand with us during the ceremony. Oh good, Mrs. Beaumont said, settling into the rocking chair with a warm smile. I was hoping you'd agree, Sarah. It wouldn't feel right celebrating William's dedication to God without the woman who brought him back from the edge of death. I would be honored, I said, my voice thick with emotion. More honored than I can express. There's one more thing, Mrs. Beaumont said, exchanging a meaningful look with her husband. Something we've been discussing for weeks now, and we've finally made our decision. I waited, curious about what other surprises this extraordinary day might bring. We want to give you your freedom, Master Beaumont said simply. Legal manumission. Papers that will make you a free woman, able to choose your own path in life. The words hit me like lightning. Freedom, the thing I had dreamed of my entire life but never dared hope for, the chance to live as a person rather than property, to make my own decisions about my future. But, I said, the practical part of my mind immediately grasping the complications. Where would I go? What would I do? I don't know how to live any way except this. You don't have to go anywhere, Mrs. Beaumont said gently. We're hoping you'll choose to stay here with William, as his nurse and companion, but as a free woman earning wages for her work rather than as a slave performing duties. You mean I could stay with William but as a choice rather than an obligation? I asked, hardly daring to believe what I was hearing exactly. Master Beaumont confirmed, you could leave if you wanted to, go north or wherever you chose, but we're hoping you'll want to stay and continue caring for William, watching him grow up, being part of his life. I looked down at the sleeping baby who had become my whole world. The child I loved as fiercely as I had loved my own James. The little boy who had healed my broken heart and given my life meaning again. There's nowhere else I'd rather be, I said softly. Nothing else I'd rather do than watch William grow up healthy and strong. Free or not, he's my boy now, and I'm his mother in every way that matters. Then it's settled, Mrs. Beaumont said, reaching over to squeeze my hand. We'll begin the legal process immediately, and by William's first birthday, you'll be a free woman, choosing to love our son, rather than a slave commanded to care for him. And when William is older, Master Beaumont added, when he asks about his early days, about how he survived when he was so sick, we'll tell him the truth, that a remarkable woman named Sarah loved him back to life, and that love is the greatest gift anyone can give or receive. That evening, as I gave William his bedtime feeding, I whispered the news to him, as if he could understand the magnitude of what had happened. Mama's going to be free, little one. Free to choose, to love you every single day. Free to watch you grow up and become the amazing man I know you're going to be. William looked up at me with his bright, intelligent eyes, his little hand resting against my chest as he nursed, and I swear he smiled around his feeding, as if he understood that something wonderful had happened, that his family had grown stronger and more complete. As I settled him in his bassinet for the night, I sang the lullaby that had become our special song. The words taking on new meaning now that I knew I would be free to sing them for as long as William needed to hear them. Hush, now baby, don't you cry. Mama's gonna sing you a lullaby. Close your eyes and go to sleep. Mama's love is yours to keep. The next morning brought a visitor to the plantation. Dr. Mitchell arriving for William's regular checkup. He examined the thriving, healthy baby with amazement, listening to his strong heartbeat, checking his reflexes, marveling at his alertness and responsiveness. Remarkable, he said to Master Beaumont as I dressed William after the examination. Absolutely remarkable. 6 months ago I was certain this child wouldn't survive the week, and now he's one of the healthiest babies I've ever seen. It's all thanks to Sarah, Master Beaumont said, his voice full of pride and gratitude. Her dedication and love saved his life. Dr. Mitchell looked at me with new respect. You've done something extraordinary here, Sarah. This child owes his life to your care. He saved my life too, I replied, adjusting William's gown and lifting him to my shoulder. Loving him gave me a reason to keep living when I thought my heart was too broken to heal well, Dr. Mitchell said, packing his medical bag. Whatever magic you've worked here, keep doing it. This little fellow is going to grow up strong and healthy thanks to you. After the doctor left, I sat in the nursery with William, playing patty cake and listening to his delighted giggles, thinking about everything that had changed since that first desperate day when Master Beaumont had reluctantly allowed me to try nursing his dying Sony, had been called useless, incompetent, a last resort when all better options had failed. But love had proved them wrong. Love had been exactly what William needed to thrive, and in loving him, I had found my own salvation, my own path from grief to joy. You taught them, I whispered to William as he reached for my face with chubby little hands. You taught them that love is what matters, not color or status or anything else, just love and the willingness to give everything you have to protect someone precious. William babbled happily in response, his sounds getting closer to actual words every day. Soon he would be calling me Mama, would be taking his first steps, would be growing from baby to boy under my watchful, loving care, and I would be there for all of it. Not as property commanded to serve, but as a free woman choosing to love, choosing to stay, choosing to be the mother that both William and I needed me to. Baby little boy who had found life at my breast had given me life in return, and together we would face whatever the future held, bound not by law or ownership, but by the strongest force in the world, the love between a mother and her child.